Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I am joined by Peyton Elder to discuss the film Rebel Moon, Chapter 1, Chalice of Blood. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, everyone. I am thrilled to finally get into these Rebel Moon director's cuts. Yes, a completely different alternate take, I would say, on the Rebel Moon franchise if you had seen the PG-13 films, but the original intent vision of this saga starts off with Chapter 1, Chalice of Blood, which, spoiler alert, I think is awesome, and also spoiler alert for the episode in general because we go to a full deep dive discussion touching upon all aspects of the movie and even getting a little philosophical for you all as we dive into the goodness of Chalice of Blood. Of course, when I say we are joined by my brother-in-law, Peyton Elder, who was very gracious with his time to watch the the extended cut. He also watched the PG-13 version too to refresh himself on that and to craft a wonderful argument in favor of why this movie is great, and to have just like a really great discussion. I think you're all going to really enjoy it a lot here. Of course, on the other side of this break, we will get into that discussion. But again, spoiler warning, you've been warned. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch Chalice of Blood, even the PG-13 version too. I think it helps, perhaps, if you want to invest the time into it. And then come back to this episode and listen in and engage with us on the social channels too if you want to uh, continue contribute, enhance the conversation in some way, shape, or form, which we always appreciate and encourage you all to do. Let's get into some Cloud City gossip, the news that has taken place in the Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent galaxy over the past week. And to start, there's a thing called Star Wars Celebration that is taking place in April in a country called Japan, and particularly in a city called Tokyo. So, with that happening in just less than maybe 2 months' time right now, somewhere around that, there's going to be some announcements with that, of course. And one of those main announcements, actually, frankly, two of them, is that we have gotten our first merch and badge art revealed for Star Wars Celebration Japan. Now, if you want to see those specifically, they're on StarWars.com. Some of the merch is just pretty much your typical Star Wars Celebration logo on a t-shirt, on a hat, on a bag, etc. But I gotta tell you, some of that badge art is pretty awesome. I'm a little jealous that I'm not one of those folks that'll be attending the con because of that badge art. I mean, that's that good that it can create the sense of like missing out because you're like, holy cow, that's a really cool visual artwork that I think really just is inspired by the it's definitely Japanese art that I've seen before. It certainly puts you in a time and place for that, a little bit of samurai inspiration. So I would think of the Kurosawa films that inspired Lucas to even create the Galaxy Far, Far Away to begin with. And that's all infused within like the upcoming and current projects in the Star Wars galaxy. So of course there's a Revenge of the Sith one for the 20th anniversary of that film this year. There's something for The Force Awakens for the 10th anniversary of that film, but also Andor has a lot of presence there. Um, I saw Young Jedi Adventures had a little bit of presence there. So there's just a lot in that. So I encourage you all to check that out. And also, Disneyland has announced new details for what they're calling the Season of the Force. So this is like Star Wars season, if you will, that takes place, I think, yearly now, annually at this point, and at Disneyland. It will feature a new nighttime projection show in Batuu called Shadows of Memory, a Skywalker saga. There will also be a stunning view of the fireworks display from Batuu itself with Star Wars music going on in the background. Hyperspace Mountain returns, new merch and food options arrive. And also, I think probably the cream of the crop of it all, Luke Skywalker will finally make his premiere at Galaxy's Edge. So if you want that character meet and greet or just to see him walking around, this is your time to do it. So if you want the details on that, of course, there's more on the Disney Parks blog about all the specifics of that all. But the Season of Force will run at Disneyland from March 28th through May 11th. Again, this is only at Disneyland. So if you're trying to come to Walt Disney World that time, or even Tokyo Disneyland, I know they're doing different stuff for Star Wars Celebration. You ain't got to find it. So a Disneyland exclusive. And hopefully one day, I'm praying to the gods that more cool stuff like this comes to Walt Disney World and Batu East. But I digress. Folks, that is all the news that I had for this week in the Cloud City Gossip segment. Let's go into our full spoiler breakdown of Rebel Moon Chapter 1, Chalice of Blood with Peyton Elder. Just on the other side of this break. Stay tuned, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. And as teased last week, we are continuing these conversations into what I would argue is the Lucasfilm adjacent area of the galaxy far, far away. The stories that are kind of inspired by Star Wars, and then people take that sandbox, make it their own thing, or perhaps play in the sandbox in a different area. And we're continuing that stretch here with talking about Rebel Moon again. We are diving deeply into the director's cuts of these films, which I would argue are actually different movies from what we talked about previously. The PG-13 versions, these are hard R rated R versions of these movies, and I'm thrilled to finally chat about these because they've been out for almost over a year now, because they came out in August of a couple months ago, many months ago, many moons ago. Did they come out a year? I don't even know. I'm off to a great start here, folks. But we're thrilled to invite first time guests to this program, my brother-in-law, Peyton Elder. Peyton, welcome to Force Ghost Conversations for the first time, and how are you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I'm honored to get the invitation. Be here on Force Ghost. Doing well. Excited to watch and talk about it. I watched many movies this weekend, all Zack Snyder. So
You've taken the deep dive into the Snyderverse, as we like to
mhm.
call it around here, and yeah, you not only have done the Rebel Moon binge, but you have done the 300, Watchmen, maybe
Yeah,
more in the future. Who knows? He's got a robust catalog for you.
yeah, I'm excited. I think we were together when Rebel Moon first released. No, I remember we
We
watched.
were together, and then you left instead of watching it. You went to bed, rightfully so. I mean, you
Yeah,
have audience. He has a time difference, a notable time difference. So when he comes back to the states, he is definitely very jet lagged. So staying up late, because Joe and I, our other brother-in-law, stayed up until midnight. No, it came out at like 9:30 randomly on like
yeah.
December 22nd. I think a year ago now. Yeah, it wasn't. So
Like last
fully
Christmas.
correcting myself, it was two Christmases ago technically at this time, and then
Mhm.
these director's cuts came out in August of this year, so a few months back. But yes, they it was December, I think 22nd was that
Yeah.
opening day night. They kind of did that
Mhm.
pre-release party, which we watched like the build-up show leading up to it when they
Yeah.
released it, and then as soon as it said like, all right, go to your Netflix now and hit play on this, on the new version, the PG-13 version, you were like, all right, see ya, going to bed.
Yeah,
So
that
then you
sounds
got to
right.
wake up the next morning and ask Joe and I how it went.
Yeah, and it's funny because I couldn't remember if I actually stayed up with you or not because I started to watch it and it felt like a new movie, but then I started to like remember as I would
Hmm.
watch it. I feel like I've seen this before. So maybe I caught it with you on your second watch or
So
something.
it's a good thing I remember all this stuff, because you watched it like 2 weeks later, and you're like, "Hey, that was a good movie." I just know all the
Uh,
details here. I know your whole life. I can tell you what happened here.
at least somebody does. I'm losing it. It's 9:30 here. I've done a full day of work. I got nothing left in the brain.
You've got a ton left in the brain, because you've got notes, and we're diving deep into the
Yes.
R-rated version of Rebel Moon Part 1, Chapter 1. See, it's even changed titles now. It's not anymore Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. It is now Rebel Moon Chapter 1, Chalice of Blood. And that's where we're going to start our conversation here today. And now that you've seen the movie, what did you think of Netflix's release strategy to have both a PG-13 version of the film come out, and to come out first?
Yeah. So I think if I put my business hat on, yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
listened to your recap
Yeah.
episode when you first saw this movie, and I understand why they do it.
Hmm.
You have to get something out, get something for the wider audience. Not everyone wants to sit down and watch a 3.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
So the need to put something more palatable out there. I understand.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't love it. It wasn't
But
my
at the
favorite
cost
movie.
of missing parts of the film.
Exactly. Yeah. I think my feeling was that I think when I watched all these films, Zack Snyder does a really good job of world building,
Hmm.
and I think he's really good at the beginning of movies. Like
You got that right.
the way he intros into Watchmen is really unique and cool. Like the slow mo, screenshots of what happens.
Hmm.
300 is captivating, of course. And then yeah, how he opens up into the moon and it's beautiful, and then there's the really tense scene with Noble. He does a really good job at that. And then I thought it rushed a little bit, like the character development,
Hmm.
and it was kind of hard to connect emotionally and understand why people were being so emotional about things
Right.
without understanding the background a little bit more. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. I really enjoyed the director's cut, but and when I first saw the PG-13 version, I was like, all right, not my favorite, but a fun movie.
Yeah, I mean, it gets all the nuts and bolts across.
Yeah,
If you want to sprint to the finish line, it's there for you. But if you, I think I mean, it's the true version
yeah,
is the R-rated version. That's what it was
yeah.
written first. It's what was like the director's true intent. That's what he would say if you're going to watch this, watch that one, spend the time and investment into it versus just putting it up here because it's a completely different experience, not only in terms of just time commitment, but you get so much more out of it. Like you were saying, it's a lot more enriching of a story because you get more time with the characters, you understand their motivations a bit more. Some of the themes are kind of frankly different here, right? The beginning of the
Yeah.
movie pays off at the end, I would argue. We're going to chat about that, I believe, in just a bit here.
Hmm.
But I and then you're right. You're right to think of like the business mind of this thing, right? It's like, all right, Netflix is a content machine model, right?
Yeah.
They're like, we don't care if it's good or bad. Like
Hmm.
Netflix is just like, we need to have something out every Friday. We need to have multiple TV seasons of this. We need to have new movies out every weekend. And it doesn't matter if the general public really likes it or not. We don't care what
Yeah.
critics say. We don't care about like Rotten Tomatoes scores. We just need to feed the machine so that people have something to watch and then talk about either on social media or at the office on Monday. So we're going to throw spaghetti against the wall. And if it sticks, we'll give it a second season. And if it gets a third season, we'll cancel it. The old
Yeah.
Netflix MO. But I guess the question is that better to do that? So the other thing, I guess, sorry, before I get to that question, is like this film, both films were filmed at the same time, right? They
Hmm.
filmed, it's basically one big movie that they decided to cut in the middle here. So you can't talk about one without the other when it comes to the business of it all.
Yeah.
Both films, all of this was filmed for a $160 million budget, which is an incredible feat given, I think, how good it looks, but also the fact that you get
Yeah.
four movies out of that budget.
Wow,
you
I didn't know
you
that.
you get one movie out of a $200 million budget that goes into theaters these days, and you're hoping that you're getting a return on investment back.
Right.
Four times Netflix was saying, "Go watch this on TV. We'll see like how it plays out." And it was the number one film in the world twice for when the PG-13 versions first came out, and
Yeah.
then I think they were kind of in the middle of like fifth or sixth in the world when the R-rated versions came out.
Okay.
But I guess the question is it better to do that for their model and system, or is because they had, I would argue, inferior versions of these movies come out first, that it drained the appetite and interest for people to go see the later versions or to have the story continue on even further?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was the right move for Netflix.
Hmm.
I think that they're going to get more money, reach more people with that kind of movie. But and I was thinking about this. It is a shame because even myself, anytime
Yeah.
there's an extended cutout, I think the stigma around director's cuts is that it's the same movie with some
Just
deleted
more
scenes.
scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Not that it really builds upon itself even more or anything. So, like you said, the original is what Zack Snyder released second, right? So
Yeah.
that's the real movie,
Yeah.
and people aren't gonna see that. A
Mhm.
lot of people won't because they don't think of it as being that different. So, and it felt like, I agree, it felt like a very different, more
Yeah.
complete film. So maybe he needs to find a way to make little shorter movies and still have the good impact. I don't know, but yeah, I wish as a viewer, for the sake of having the best film out there, they never released the first
Mhm.
one. But
Yeah, I agree. Um, in his defense, Netflix was like, "We'll pay for this if you give us a 2-hour PG-13 version too." So
fair,
like
yeah,
he pitched them on the idea of this wild, wacky space opera, Seven Samurai in space that's like full of sex and and gore,
yeah,
and they're like, "Give us something that kids can watch."
yeah,
Which also is fair too, right? I mean, like
yeah,
if you're trying to set up a franchise, right? You want to sell some toys, some action figures.
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of nudity in this. There's a lot of bones being punched out of place and people getting headshotted in this series. Not necessarily kid friendly.
Yeah, totally, totally agree. Uh, but it really was an amazing film. The second one,
Hmm.
the three characters that come to mind when I think about character building, I think one is Noble.
Hmm.
Already, the PG-13 I think does a great job of making him a really compelling villain.
Agree.
But the benefit is really that opening scene, right? The
Mm,
20-minute cold
yes.
open,
Yes.
where it's pretty gnarly, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And even without it, the village scene is in the PG-13 is still good at conveying that, but
Yeah.
having both of those things really
Uh,
shows how
he's a monster right from the start.
diabolical he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
diabolical indeed. I
And
mean, that's just wild.
yeah, you see him playing with the brains in the director's cut, and he's like reading the thoughts, and you also wonder, like, this is a new world. Is he magic? Can he really
Hmm.
see the memories, or is he just coming up with things because he's a psychopath?
All the above, frankly. I mean,
Yeah,
who? How can you really trust this guy? He's just literally trying to climb a ladder.
yeah, absolutely. So that was really nice. I think Eris, the boy,
Hmm.
the young soldier, we know his backstory. In the PG-13 one, we have
Exactly.
no idea. So
Totally cut out.
he's just a good-hearted soldier. It's really not even a plot point. It's just he's just there
He just
fighting
exists. Yeah.
his own soldier. Yeah, his buddies. So that was nice to get his story more, his character arc, and then finally Jimmy.
Hmm.
I,
Hmm. A lot more Jimmy
a lot
in
more
the
Jimmy.
extended cut.
Not gonna say even in the extended cut, I fully followed. Maybe you got a better read on it than me of this journey of revelation he was going through, but it was still much better than the first one where he disappears after he shoots the guy,
Hmm.
and then he appears at the end of the movie with the horns and the cape, and you're just like, where did this guy come from?
Well, we're gonna chat about Jimmy in a bit here.
Okay.
We'll save that conversation for for a little bit here, but we're getting into the meat of this film, which I'm really glad about. One last note on the PG-13 versus rated R version. It's so interesting when a film is made specifically with a rating in mind, and then they try and like make it not that, right? I think that's some of the issue that people were
Mm,
having with the PG-13 version. It's like, how can you tell the story and then dilute it into this?
yeah.
And we're going to talk about runtime and all that stuff here in a second. But I can only think of like one other instance, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this version before, but have you seen Deadpool 2? I assume you probably perhaps have
Yes,
over the
it's
years
been a
at some
long
point.
time, but I've seen it. Yeah.
But you've seen it, you know Deadpool's very R-rated, and they actually made a PG-13 version of Deadpool 2. Uh, and
Okay.
it was like meant to be like the Princess Bride, where Deadpool is literally telling the story to the same kid, Fred Savage from, and he's in a
No.
bed, literally Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool outfit reading the story to him, and it's just the PG-13 version. People can find it out there. It's available.
Pretty funny.
It's kind of wild, but everyone that watched it was like, "Why am I watching an inferior version of Deadpool? Like, I know what I'm getting into with this." And I don't know, did Netflix try to do a pull a fast one on us and be like, hey, hope you like this just enough that you come back and watch the real version of this here. But I think if they do future versions that they don't do this strategy again. I gotta think.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm guessing it didn't cost them so much to let Zack Schneider shoot his extra scenes.
They didn't. No, it was
And
part of the main budget. So
yeah, and it's their platform. They don't have to pay anyone to put another movie up there, so no harm for them. But yeah, I kind of hope they, for the sake of film, just put out the real product.
just put it out first
Put it
and let
out. Yeah, at
people
least
enjoy
put
it.
it out first.
Or at
Yeah,
the same time, like I think people are smart enough that they can figure out, or they'll
yeah, that
say,
as
"Oh my
well.
god." I don't. I'm giving people too much credit though because I've seen a lot of videos online of people being like, I thought I was watching the Super Bowl this weekend, and I actually accidentally turned on the one from 2 years ago when the Eagles played the Chiefs, or they're watching some Madden streamer play the game on TV,
No.
and then they're like, "Oh, Grandma put on the wrong Super Bowl for us." So I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe people do need their handheld a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, nowadays it's hard to have faith in the human race sometimes.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Well, you've already noted some of the major differences of the film so far, noting the Eris backstory, um, and Jimmy's just really just journey of life. But
Mhm,
I would say probably the biggest difference, aside from just like story wise and the rated R aspects of it all, is like the runtime itself, right?
mhm.
So the PG-13 is only just 2 hours and 10 minutes, whereas this is clearly 3:35, I think, final runtime.
Yeah.
So do you think that Chalice of Blood, Chapter One, required the 3.5 hour length story in order to tell what it was trying to do in this film?
Mm. Yeah, maybe not the full 3.5 hours. Yeah, I think there was still some opportunity to cut a little bit,
Hmm.
but I mean, a good chunk of that, like I said, was that 20-minute intro. I
Hmm.
wouldn't have wanted to cut that.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of it was also more about, I'm just blanking on her name now, the main character,
Cora
or Cora, thank you.
or Arthelaus.
Or Arthelaus, yeah. Uh, just getting more of her journey.
Hmm.
Like, I even remember the night of the festival,
Hmm.
when she sleeps with the guy,
Den.
with Den. In the original, it's a little unclear if she actually did or not, and
Yeah, it's
so
just hinted at, perhaps. Yeah.
it hints at that, and the next day in the field, the young woman is like, "Oh, I heard the house shaking," and I was like,
Yeah, you're doing your part for the harvest. I could tell.
"Yeah." I was like, "Is that her? Was he cheating on her?" And so just like ambiguity. So even just even the
There's
sex scene
no
provided
ambiguity.
it provided clarity. So it even helped to make her story and her character arc more believable. Otherwise, I just kind of thought in the first one she was just this
Hmm.
brooding woman, and it was unclear to why.
Yeah.
Um, so most of the additions I thought were good, but
Yeah.
I'm for sure there were a few things. Like again, the Jimmy thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I'm sure we'll come full circle in part two.
Yeah.
So any question marks or doubts of things that I thought might have been superfluous,
Hmm.
kind of like here I go, kind of like Dune. Like I'm willing to like give it the chance to see the full saga before
Right.
releasing judgment.
Well, I think that's a fair, apt comparison here, right? Dune. A lot of the criticism I would say for Dune Part One, the Denis Villeneuve version. I should preface that of Dune is very similar to this, where it's like it's clearly one story chopped up, cut
Yeah.
off in the middle at some point, and then they said, "All right, this is where Part One ends. Part Two we'll pick up from literally from where we left off." Um, and the main criticism is that all right, it's world building, it's a little boring, can be
Mhm.
dry in the details at times, but I think once you have Part Two, you're like, all right, that's fine. I enjoyed all that. Now it's all one cohesive story, and it pays off at the end.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe the only difference I see is I you could have finished Rebel Moon with that fight scene,
Hmm.
with Atticus Noble dying, and like
Yeah.
it had the beginning, middle, and end of a movie. You had the big fight scene at the end.
Sure.
But yeah, but there were other side plot, side character questions, like Tarek. There's like a whole. I need more on Tarek.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I'm sure it'll come. I'm sure
Oh
it'll come.
yeah. Oh yeah. Get ready. Get ready. You know what's the interesting thing is like so they like 3 days after the PG-13 version came out last Christmas, they released the novelization of the movie,
Okay.
um, which was based off of the R-rated version. So I was reading that. Listeners, you have no idea what I mean by I say this, but when I'm at the coffee table or at the chairs in the in our in my in-laws house
Next to the kitchen.
with at
Uh-huh.
Christmas, we yep with in the morning everyone typically hangs out around that area
Hmm.
and chit chats, and I'm on my iPad just reading through all these pages here, all the sex scenes, all the gratuitous violence. So I knew it was going to happen in this movie. Maybe 8 months before it even came out, and obviously a
Okay.
little longer because I took a while to read it. But I'm just like making sure no one's looking over my shoulder because like it's very graphic and and how it describes these scenes. So I'm like,
Were they
oh
pretty
man,
closely? They followed each other pretty closely.
100% aligned. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Very, very
nice.
much so aligned. The I was like, oh man, it starts off with Eris. Like I get so much more time with this guy in the beginning.
Mm.
Oh no, he has to kill his dad. Like, brutal,
His dad was a
brutal.
beast too.
He was, and he releases that like little alien guy to go out and just like take out as many of them as they can. That little pet that they had in the cage.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This whole planet's destroyed. Don't
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Um, but yeah, it like I said, I think the film justifies its length. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder of whether pacing is an issue for a person or not. But I think
Mhm.
shoot all your bullets, right? If you're
Yeah.
going to tell a story, don't cut something off of the editing floor just to get into a runtime, because if it's a well done story at 2 hours and 40 minutes, I've watched movies that are 2 hours long that feel like it's taken forever to get there,
Yeah.
versus I watched 3 hour movies that go by like that, right? I think of like
Yeah.
an Oppenheimer, Lord of the Rings, right? These
Mhm.
notoriously long films that feel very short because they're good. And if it's the best product, then put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a bummer because more movies today are like the PG-13 version
Too much, yeah, too much so.
than the director's cut. So I think when we get the Rebel Moon, Chapter One, Chalice of Bloods, we get the Dunes, we get
Hmm.
the movies where they spend the time and the money, most importantly,
Right.
to do these films justice and to create the full story. It's just so much better. It's such a more memorable film experience.
I agree. I agree. And with that, you get better CG because they have a vision from start to finish.
Yeah.
Like without the people interfering and being like, cut this, cut that, change this around. All these middle managers that are
Yeah.
hawking over the process. You get these films that have like those. I'm sure you see them online all the time of like those CG shots that are taken out of context, but they're like, oh, not looking great. You have eyes looking in this direction and whatnot, and you're like, oh, ooh, oh boy.
Yeah.
But in
And
this, you can't really complain about any of those things.
no, I thought the CGI, what you told me about the budget is shocking, especially considering the cast. It's not a cheap cast that
It's
they
not a
had.
cheap cast.
Um,
It's four movies for the
yeah.
price of one.
Yeah. So good business by Netflix. So credit to them. And Zach, if you convinced any of them to take a cut or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, all in all, the CGI was nice. There's only maybe one blood splatter where I
Hmm.
thought could have been a little.
And you're like within a
Better.
movie of like thousands of these shots. Like, how can
Yeah,
I complain?
exactly. Yeah, no, no, yeah, absolutely.
You want to know what's crazy is that they built that village, the village of Velt. Like it's a real set,
Ah,
and the grain
cool.
was actually really real grain that they had to farm. Like
Wow.
it, you think of so much of this film as CG, and obviously it is because you can't have all these planets built.
Right.
But the main core of it, the heart of the series, that village on Veld, is literally a town that they built in the hills of California.
Oh, really? It was in
Yeah,
California? Ah,
crazy,
cool.
crazy
Oh,
stuff.
beautiful valley out there.
Yeah, yeah. If you're interested, they have a documentary about the making of Rebel Moon on Netflix too that they did.
Ah,
So
I'll
a
put that
little
in there.
half hour deluge into that as well.
Okay.
So what are the aspects or scenes of this movie did you like the most?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the world building.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's clear they didn't hold back on the landscape and all the different cool planets. It was very Star Wars, where they have all the different,
Oh,
types
absolutely.
of
Yeah.
different topographies, geographies, climates,
Mm-hmm.
everything. So it was cool. It was clear they spent time and energy like on that. So that was really cool. Again, I really liked the first 45 minutes in total. I think between the cold open and then with the other planet, and
Mm-hmm.
then at the village, that first 45 to 60 minutes, just
Before they head to Providence,
yes, exactly. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. That was all really good, really well done.
up till Simri gets his head beaten in.
Oh, yeah, literally a dent in the
Oh
skull.
my gosh. It's wild when you read it, right? Like reading is like you create an image in your head, but then like to actually see it on screen, you're like, holy cow, they went there. I can't believe it.
Yeah, and I wonder how many weapons they went through before they landed on this wooden
This like femur.
mallet.
Yeah.
That's just gonna yeah. I
And then
have to
taking the
imagine that
teeth
wasn't
and
the
then putting it on the picture.
yeah. It gave a little more context to one,
The
these
priests in
the
general.
priests, yeah, what they're
Yeah.
doing there. And then also it shows the vastness of how much terror they're just raining for arguably not such a huge revolution, like not a huge group of rebels. They're just
A small group, yeah.
planet to planet. You look at Noble the wrong way. You tap his shoulder when you offer him ale. He's gonna.
Oh, we'll triple it now.
Yeah. So I thought that was all really good. Even the fight scene in the barn. When all the soldiers
You know
are
what's crazy
misbehaving.
about these sequences? Because of how graphic the R-rated version is,
Mhm.
they have two different choreographies for those fight sequences.
Oh
It's
wow.
not just like the same scenes without the blood and all that stuff, because how could you do that? So they have completely different action sequences for both of these movies.
Wow, they learn two completely different
Because they
dances,
had to.
choreographies. Yeah, that's really cool. And I love the sand when she grabs it. Anytime they use their environment around
Hmm.
them. So that was just all really, really well done. And then, of course, when Jimmy comes in and he's holding the gun, he comes off as peaceful, but then you see his deadly side when he's pinpoint accurate with a gun sideways, lying sideways in his hand. So I really, really enjoyed that. Um, Finally, the last part that I noted here is I really liked you talked about the Seven Samurai in your
Hmm.
first podcast. I've never seen it, but
Oh, come on! It got to
I
put on your list.
I know. So anytime I watch a movie and there's a montage of like building the crew, I always go
Hmm.
to like Ocean's 11.
Sure,
Like
that's a
that's
great apt comparison.
yeah. So I always love those. They're fun. You get introduced to all the different characters in pretty cool ways. I just liked Terex. I thought it was a beautiful scene. I thought
Hmm.
the hippogriff on steroids
The
was
Ben, they call it the Bennu.
the Bennu. You're much better with all the names.
Well, when you read the book, you get told all this information.
True, true. You do get to see more. I did watch on subtitles for the director, so I could like
Hmm.
catch the names and everything. But clearly, it stuck. Um,
Time for the
but
rewatch.
yeah, I need to do the rewatch. But yeah, I just thought that was beautiful. Hippogriff. I'm guessing that was all CGI.
Hmm. Oh, totally. Yeah, none of
That
that
was
was great. Yeah, it's not a real creature. You just can't go in the hills of California and find it.
so yeah, those are some of my highlights for sure.
Awesome,
How about
awesome.
you?
Yeah, I think that era sequence is just that's the perfect. I mean, it's the perfect way to start this movie because it shows just how brutal and uncompromising the mother world is, and especially Noble, right? But it stems from the top. It stems from the Senate, and it stems from the Regent Belisarius, right? So you get all of that in this, and you get more time with Regent Belisarius. I like that. I mean,
Yeah,
like he's the big bad of this entire thing, and he's that father figure, horrible father figure to Arthur. in this.
Hmm.
So just getting more time with him, more time with Noble too, more time with Cassius. You get a lot more of that relationship.
Yeah.
Cassius isn't even in the PG-13 version. Um, so like to even just cut out a major like number two side character in that.
Yeah.
I
Very
think
bold.
the thing that sticks out with me the most, I will say, just in terms of like an interesting thing, just a little detail that goes a long way in showing the brutality of this world and why like it should be stopped, like
Hmm.
why you should be a rebel against this, is the like just the side comment that they make where it's like the dreadnoughts are powered by the bones of the people that they conquer. I
Yeah. Oh
was
my
just like,
god.
oh my god, of course they would. These things got to run on something, and that's why they're pillaging and terrorizing every known world in the galaxy, and
It's
just
the
killing,
spice.
and it's their spice. You got to fuel these ships. The war machine keeps fueling itself, and it's like what a terrible and honest metaphor for the war machine itself.
Mm.
And it's like a woman too, and she's crying, and she cries every time that they have to go into like a
Yeah, that was an
hyperspace.
interesting. That was a really interesting addition to the cut.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes so much more sense when like and that Cora feels a connection to this in like
This
the not
thing.
even a character itself, it's a thing, but she's like we're both being exploited for the purposes
Yeah.
of this world. Like I was taken from my family, from my world, and forced to fight for them, and brainwashed in a way like Eris is too, under the guise of I did this because there's nothing left to do. And this also this dreadnought is created, and and it has no will. Like it's all freedom, and free will has been taken away from it. Not that it necessarily would have had, but it's just the
Right.
metaphor of that. Also the like the light speed jumps that they kind of do in this when they jump from one big
Hmm.
plot of space to another is oddly symbolizes like a woman's vagina. I don't know if
Oh.
you noticed that, but I was also like, that's definitely there for a reason. I think it's because the lady too is like birthing them
Ah.
into a new space there. So I'm like, okay, there's a lot more deeper symbolism in this than they're initially leading on. So in a
Ah.
film where you have all this and then you have like the crazy brothel sequence as well, like it's all in
Mhm.
between here, right? Star Wars
Yeah.
goes to a cantina, they go to a brothel. I mean, it's all just Rebel Moon for
Yeah.
you, taking it to the next degree.
Noble has those
Oh,
snakes.
the
Those
snakes that
snake.
are the sex snakes that are just engorging him. Oh, oh
It was
man.
it was interesting if you noticed between the two versions, they switched the sequence
Mm-hmm.
of that.
It sure did. They
So
changed it
that
around.
was yes, that was really that was I added a little something more. I don't know what it added, but it was just interesting to see him start and finish with the snakes, and then offer Cassius to join. Like,
He's like, you want in? You want in on this? No, no, sir. I'm good. I'm good. We have to talk about the Hawkshaws.
yeah. The last thing I'd say I thought about I found the laser, not the laser swords, but the guns like slightly satisfying.
You
Like
did. That's an interesting point. So speak more about that.
I think it wasn't just like in Star Wars, it's like the pew pew. It's like the
Uh
very
huh.
like clean single shot of laser,
And you get
and
hit and it just like burns you a little bit. You go down. Whereas this like
yeah,
clearly takes a whole lot of you.
yeah. This was really like it was like a hefty laser, and there you can see there's like laser spray. So it's
Hmm.
not. So it's like this mix of like a shotgun and a laser. I don't know. It was cool, and
Yeah.
you can tell, especially in the R version, it really does some damage.
God,
Uh,
got that right. It ain't messing around. I think at the end where Gunner uh, kills Kai, and just like his
uh-huh.
brains just pop out of the top of his head. Like you don't
Yeah.
even see that. I think it just closes in on his eyes in the PG-13 version. And it's just assumed that you just have to, your brain just has to fill in the gaps on the rest of it there. But no, you see, there's no chance he's coming back.
No, yeah, he's gone, which I was a
What
little
did
sad about,
what
but
do you think about Kai, Charlie Hunnam's character in this? He's like a weasel in many ways, but he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
yeah, he was one of my favorites, I think.
Hmm.
For one, the accent. I've seen him in different movies. I don't know what his real
He has a
accent
different
is,
accent every time.
but this was just it was just a fun one to listen to, like the Scottish, Irish. I don't know what it was, but yeah, he was a fun character, very
Hmm.
charismatic. He even like is being humorous with Cora, and he's like, "Oh, you're begging. I'll join because you're begging me, you know. So
Yeah, if you're begging me, I'll come.
yeah. So in that scene, I felt like he was just the third guy in line trying to court
Hmm.
court
Hmm. Just
after
just in a long line of people. Yeah.
after Gunnar and Dan. So yeah, I liked him a lot. Of course, he ended up being a snake.
He literally is a snake.
So I know
There's
people.
nothing redeemable about him in this movie.
No, in hindsight, though, you got to kind of make sense. Like the haul he was going to get from that
You gotta give this
financially.
guy his props. He was brilliant in like
Yeah,
weaseling his way into a system and then taking advantage of the opportunities presented in front of him.
yeah,
Like he's like,
opportunist.
let's pick up this guy. Let's pick up this guy too. We're gonna need this guy for the crew. Oh, you want the brave General Titus? Let's go find him.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So he was good. I liked him. I wish we could see more of him,
Hmm.
but I'm sure he served his purpose.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think unless they go back in time a bit. There's no way to really bring him back at all.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say too, I liked a lot how they do the Blood Axe, Darien Blood Axe fight, like in the
Yeah.
end battle sequence, how he's doing that like leap towards that
Hmm.
like kind of pseudo helicopter that's floating in the sky. Um, and he takes like 4 hits. Like he first off he misses when he goes for the guy,
Yep.
but then he gets like 4 shots to the stomach, clearly that go through him. Unlike the PG-13 version, which just
Yeah.
kind of graze him, and you just have to assume he has fatal wounds from that. Like, no, he's not coming back from this at all.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a point that I made. I think when I watched the PG-13 versions, is that like there's no like soldier of fortune kind of thing. It's not like an 80s action film where like Arnold
Mm,
Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone is running around and getting 50,000 headshots without taking a single, wound or a flesh wound or something like that. Like you just
mhm.
can't do that in this world. It's setting the rules of the world really well that like even the best rebel of all of them still is could die. Like there's no one is safe in this world, in this particular universe. Like any of them could go.
Yeah, yeah, and that keeps it exciting. And it's definitely not just the classic, for sure. Probably a few people will survive. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some death to come. And yeah, Darian Bloodaxe was my other one that I noted is one of my favorites. We didn't get so much of him, a little
Yeah.
more in the director's cut
Yeah,
than
a
the
lot more though
original.
compared to what you get though. I mean, it's just a little,
Yeah,
but it goes a long way.
yeah, true. But I like that he I'm sure in the midst of the chaos, being caught up in being a revolution, he remembered where they came from and their
Hmm.
roots, and it's like, what are
Exactly.
we fighting for if not these people that can't fight for themselves? So I
Yeah.
really
What
did
are we?
like that.
It's a great point of like, what are we if like we're not going to stand up when people literally come to us and ask for help?
Yeah,
What good
yeah,
are we as a rebellion if we're just going to like like say no?
right.
We're no better than them. We're just existing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just fighting for ourselves at that point, or for anyone that can pick up a gun. So
Hmm.
I liked him a lot. I thought the two things that I thought were kind of funny with him is one, when they're all captured and then Gunnar is releasing them. As soon as he's released, he has that gun in his hand.
Yep. He had it ready to go.
He never dropped it. So I was like, wow. All right, good. I guess they didn't make him get rid of the gun. And then the other part, when he's doing the slow mo run up to the up to eventually die.
Hmm.
I just thought it was funny because it's slow mo, but you see like the strides of his legs are quite short. Like they're like, like it's a brisk jog in reality. So I was just like, come on,
uh,
make him fully stretch.
Not a brisk jog though. I'll tell you, they actually did run in that
Ah,
sequence.
okay.
He tore his ACL doing that jump.
No way.
They actually did the jump. It was a fully practical effect, and then doing the stabbing.
Oh,
Like he did the jump, and
wow.
he was tied to a thing, ran up that little ledge there, and then leaped off.
Okay, well then, Darian, my apologies. And also being on a skinny ladder thing, maybe you got to slow it down a little bit. So,
Take care of yourself. He goes 110% in all these films, and frankly, every person in a Snyder film, uh, it's these are very physical film. His films are very physical,
hmm
and in terms, especially when it comes to fight choreography and all that stuff, and the action sequences. So the joke is, and it's not a joke anymore, but they always have a full on gym on set. So
Yeah, I remember you saying
they're
that.
always working out. Like if they're not being filmed or preparing for a scene, they're off.
Mhm.
Everyone's off in the gym getting a pump on because they're like, at some point, I may be asked to have my shirt off, and I gotta be looking my best for this.
I'll tell you what, when I watch 300, I've done a bit about the opposite of a New Year's resolution with exercising. Since I've since I've
No, it
since I've
was your resolution to not exercise.
got
Own
I've
it.
I've really dropped the ball since I've gotten back to Paris, and I was watching 300 on a Saturday afternoon. I had nothing to do, so I just picked up the exercise bands throughout
It
the whole
inspired you.
300 movie. I was yeah. What's more inspiring than Gerard Butler? Just
You want to know
300.
the thing though? Those bodies are like the abs are CG in that movie.
Oh no!
Like Fassbender and all of them are not just fully ripped out to
They're
the
not
nth
just
degree. They are CG'd a bit.
okay. That makes sense because it was pretty. They were pretty unbelievably jacked.
Yeah, it's unfair to make these guys roided out to that degree over the course of probably 5 months of shooting that thing
Yeah,
to like keep that, maintain that too. It's so
yeah.
difficult to do that. But hey, it got the point across. You were inspired. You were ready
I
to rock.
was. Just don't tell me the pecs were fake too, or I'll lose all hope.
No, 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 no. The pecs are fine, but just like the definition of the abs themselves
Yeah, yeah,
needed some touch ups. But again, for a film that I think maybe had $100 million budget too, is
yeah,
astounding when it comes to doing all that. Ah,
yeah.
300 talk. Who knew we would get into that?
Anything Zack Schneider, he knows what he's doing.
I tell you, when you get to Man of Steel eventually, and you see Henry Cavill, like that man, I don't even know how the muscles work. The human body wasn't meant. It truly is a Superman.
All right, so I'll put it on the list. I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got some good ones coming. Especially, well, that's a different conversation about director's cut. Um, so the we kind of you hinted at this a little bit here. So the action sequences are filled with slow motion camera takes. How do you
Mhm.
feel about its usage in the movie? Was it too much, just right, just enough? What do you think?
It felt just right in the director's cut.
I agree. Yes.
I I think it felt much more tasteful and natural.
Yeah.
In fact, my favorite one wasn't even the fighting scenes. It was in the oh gosh, be the hippogriff,
The Bennu.
the Bennu. Thank you. It was in the Bennu scene when he flies over Korra and
And
the
she does
slow
like the
mo of her
touch.
touching the
Oh,
feathers, and
beautiful.
it was a moment of seeing her actually like happy in the film.
Yeah. She never has
And
any other happiness.
yeah, not really. Even when she was like having sex with Den, I don't. She
There
was
was no
bleeding.
pleasure.
She
There
was
was no
bleeding.
pleasure. That was pure bodily function.
That was a business
It
transaction.
was. It was.
So I don't know. That just really stuck with me. It was a really nice to see her embracing the beauty in the, not the minute because it's a beautiful, huge creature, but
Hmm.
slowing down for a second to appreciate the beauty around her. So that was my favorite. But
Yeah.
in the PG-13, it did feel like a bit much. It
Hmm.
made it feel a little cornier, I would
Hmm.
say. Of course, when you watch a Zack Snyder film, you know you're going to get it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it was much. I liked it much more in the second version for sure.
Yeah. I think with the added runtime, it doesn't feel as like, oh, here's another one. Here's another one. Because
Mhm.
it's like, first off, the scenes are longer, the action sequences are longer, it's different action sequence takes, so in the grand scheme of things, you're just like not fully attuned into it as much as you are in the PG-13 version. And I was a defender of it when the film came out. I'm like, it's just his visual style, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And then seeing how it was supposed to be played out in the longer version, I'm like, oh well, in hindsight maybe it was a little much. But you're
Yeah,
condensing this down again and diluting it, so he has to be like, okay, I have to showcase some action sequences, I have to get the point across in this scene, and we have to do it within this limited time frame. It kind of constrains you what you can do.
yeah, absolutely. And one of the scenes I didn't love the most in the PG-13 version is when Cora's giving her background to Gunnar, right? Like
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
start their quest and they're sitting on the fire, and out of nowhere she just dives into this heart-wrenching story.
Yeah.
I think the director's cut builds to that much better.
I think so too.
Um,
Agree entirely.
and and when they do the scene where the guy she loves in the military. It cuts to him being dead. That was well done. And
Yeah.
then she stands up in this barrage of lasers all around her, and this is where I was like, all right, she should be dead.
She's the greatest warrior ever.
I know, but she's like standing there just staring at her love, and there's like 10,000 laser beams on either side. But
Yeah.
so I think just the slow mo there emphasized the disbelief of it a little bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when he had the full building of everything, like I already felt better about
Right.
hearing her full story that way. It was a more natural thing to
Yeah.
witness.
It makes a lot more sense for sure in that pro process. And yeah, what a wild thing where they're like, you're encouraged to take a lover so that when the minutia of taking planet after planet after planet, you still have something to fight for.
Which is fair. I
Like
mean,
it's kind of brilliant.
it's brilliant. And then if they die, you're like
You have
you
another
fight
reason to
out
fight for.
of
You're like,
memory.
"Oh,
It's
it's
yeah,
revenge. How dare you kill my lover?"
it is genius. So props to Belisarius there.
Terrible man. This
Terrible
terrible
man.
man. You terrible man.
And
Um,
the last thing I'll say about the slow mo is that's what made me think of 300. I
mhm.
didn't connect at the time that he did both movies. So
Oh,
I
interesting.
was I'm watching it on a Friday night and I'm seeing the slow mo. I was like, oh, this is in the blood. I'm like, this is really giving 300. And I really liked
Did a
300.
Google search and you're like, "I think this is the same this is similar here." He was really
Yeah.
inspired by 300.
And then I watch it and I'm like, I look it up and I see, and I'm like, oh. And then I was like, all right, well, now I want to watch 300 to do a comparison, because knowing I didn't love the PG-13 of Rebel Moon, I was like, am I going to not love 300? Like, it's been a long time. And then, of course, I watched 300 and I was like, no, this is great.
Still
So,
still holds up.
yeah.
Still holds up.
So,
Jerry B.
hey, gotta love him.
Well, I got a question for you now. This is some family lore here, folks. So if we're going over your heads here, forgive me. But did you see 300 first, or was it Law Abiding Citizen?
Oh my
Because I
gosh.
think they both came out around the same time. I think it's that 2007 age was Gerard Butler's like big foray into this.
Yeah, I'm doing
Um,
a quick Google search. Yeah, that came out March 2007. I
mhm.
think I saw 300 first.
So that was your introduction to the Jerry B. Aside from Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, I think so. Because yeah, Law Abiding Citizen was '09.
Oh yeah, so yeah, must have been
Um,
your first foray into the
yeah,
Jerry B. world.
yeah, he was like my celebrity man crush. Like I
Yeah.
just loved all of his movies. He was
Oh,
such
and
a
he still is
badass.
a wonderful action hero and all that.
Yeah, so good question.
Oh, fun little tab there.
Also a
Uh,
great movie, great bloody movie, Law Abiding Citizen.
Also another, Jerry B's true to form. True to form.
Mhm.
So of the main group, kind of that seven that we're talking about here that comprise the seven samurai of this story here, um which like character and their story resonated with you the most and why?
Yeah, so again, Darien Blood Axe was one of my favorites. Just again, he was fighting for the right things and stayed grounded in
Mhm.
his real
Mhm.
causes. Again, I liked Kai. He chose the dark side instead of the
He sure
honorable
did.
side. He's the
He's
Han
not
Solo.
honorable at all.
I know everyone draws the comparisons to Han Solo with him, and
But he's like real Han.
yeah,
Like Han is a he's a good guy. You've seen
hmm
you haven't perhaps seen Solo, a Star Wars story?
I'm no,
Okay, so I won't fully spoil it for you yet, but yeah, Han is a good guy. He comes back when he's needed on the Death Star, and he just constantly keeps proving everyone right that like he's never going to betray you. Whereas Kai betrays you.
yeah. He absolutely did.
Kai is like, he's the outlandish rogue that you're like, I don't know what side he's going to fall on. I can't trust him. And you shouldn't trust him. Like, I
Yeah,
I don't know what Cora's doing. She's just willfully speaking very loudly that she's Arthaleus and is one of the biggest criminals in the galaxy, perhaps the biggest, because she's blamed for the death of the slain king and queen and the daughter Princess Issa. But like, you just can't be throwing that story around, girl. You got to be careful about who you say it to. And Kai overhears this, and he's like, "Oh, I got the biggest score in the world here."
yeah. He would have been set for life.
He would
Uh,
have. That's why he took the chance.
that's why I took it. Yeah. So he was compelling, but he's gone but not forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think of the rest, I like Tarek. Like I said, I need
Need a
more.
little bit more. You've got some
They
more meat on that bone.
they mentioned briefly that he's a prince that
Oh
ran
yeah.
away. That's all we know. He's a prince that ran away, and now it seems like he's fighting out of guilt or something. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we'll get that in part two. I hope, anyways.
Wink, 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 wink.
Uh-huh. And in your book, it covered both parts. The book you read.
So part two is its own separate book, but
Okay.
yes, it covers all that.
Okay. Nice. Um, I need more Titus. I
Mm-hmm.
I need. I wasn't satisfied with how he was brought on. I need to see him take over in the second one.
Yeah.
But I like Nemesis.
You like Nemesis? She speaks literally not a word in the
It's okay. You
the
don't
PG
need.
13, but she gets a lot more speaking in this one, which I think
Yeah,
it works.
I liked her more. Yeah, in the director's cut because in the original, the first time we see her, she's entering the spider lair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Mm-hmm.
mines. Versus before, we get the backstory, a little bit of who she
Yeah.
is, why she's going to fight this spider woman, and it's cool. She's more complete. She like has robot arms, and she has the to hold the laser swords,
Yes. Molten
um,
swords, they call them.
molten swords. Thank you. And I also like the actress. I know her from Sense8, another
Yeah.
Netflix
Okay.
original, and she's like a karate master. So she's
Perfect.
quiet, but she's effective.
She is very effective, and I just like the concept of this is their version of a lightsaber, is the molten sword, and literally it's a piece of steel that they light on fire. And
Mm-hmm.
what you get in the book that also isn't really explained too well in either the director's cut or the PG-13 cut is that the steel is so strong that if, let's say, you were like you will with the lightsaber, right? We see them in Star Wars like just cut everything. Nothing can stop a lightsaber if you're in like it would take a second, but eventually it will cut through it, right?
Yeah.
The same thing with these swords. Like, say if you were to drop it, like if I had one in my hand right now and I dropped it, it would go all the way through the core of the earth, down through like that's why there's so few of them, but they like
Mm,
not everyone has these things, but also the need to have like a gauntlet, right? You don't, she doesn't have hands, she has metal robotic hands because
right.
you just can't use your hands to hold these hot things. It's like if we try to
Mm-hmm.
hold a cast iron, you're going to burn your hand off. And imagine that
Yeah.
times an infinite number of heat.
Yeah, it's a cool concept. I like
Mm-hmm.
that a lot, and I just thought she was a good actress to wield them.
Yeah,
Like a
it fit well.
powerful, yeah, that they fit very well. The one character I didn't love is Gunner.
Really, really interesting. Why not Gunnar?
I think it starts because he cuts the legs out from under his
Sinri.
Henry. Thank you. He just goes against the Henry. He's such a cool guy, good dude.
Yeah.
He does have his redemption, and then he rescues everybody. He kills Kai, and then it's funny. As soon as the fighting starts, he just disappears. Um,
Yeah.
but, but maybe it's because he's the most human of all of them, and
I think you're onto it.
we're all seeing a little bit of ourselves inside. Like we all want to think we'd be brave and do the right thing, but in reality,
You got to the point. You got it.
uh-huh.
It's
So
hard to look at ourselves.
yeah,
Gunnar
I
is us,
exactly. We want to be the hero, but in reality, we might be the side character that plays his role.
but he plays the ultimate role. He's the one that saves everybody.
He does. He
When push
steps
comes to
in.
shove, he's the only one that says, "This is I'm not going to do this, and I'm
Yeah,
going to do the opposite." Right. So it's kind of like the ultimate lesson I say with the film is we have the like no one is neutral in anything. You can't be
yeah,
neutral. You have to make a choice, one way or the other, and sometimes you're forced to make that choice.
yeah.
So the film starts off with that incredible era sequence where
Mhm.
he's given the choice and he has to kill his dad, or he doesn't have to, but he would kill his entire family at that cost. But
Right.
to quote Rorschach, never compromise even in the face of Armageddon. Right? I think that's the point that they are trying to make there. But
Yeah.
Eris has an opportunity now to make amends for what he's done and his guilt and all that perhaps later on.
Yeah.
But Gunnar it makes a choice and speaks up. I think all of us probably might say something in the same vein that he did, if speak up and, oh no, we can do this, and he doesn't speak for us. This man is stupid. It's a very good scene. But we all act out of fear, and when you're faced with such insurmountable odds, sometimes that can drive us to do things that are perhaps not. Humans make mistakes, and I think Gunnar definitely makes a mistake in the beginning
Yeah.
of the movie, and when faced with a chance to either not necessarily redeem himself, but to just do a good act again,
Hmm. He steps up.
faced with literally the same choice in a different way that Eris is given the choice at the beginning. He says, "No, I'm not going to do this," and then sets everything off in motion. And fortunately, he had really good soldiers around him to lead to this wonderful victory, because it doesn't seem like they have too many victories against the Mother World in this universe.
Yeah. No.
I don't think Devra and Darien Bloodaxe are really making big strides and efforts into saving the galaxy at all.
No.
Um,
I agree.
but I think that's the hard part about Gunnar's story, is that he is us. He's all of us. He's what more than likely what we if we exist in this world, we're most likely like him. We're just a simple
Yeah.
farmer, goes off and sells our grain and sells
Hmm.
it to perhaps the rebels. Maybe they're paying some money. Maybe he had some ulterior motive to sell it to them.
Yeah. You never
He made a
know.
choice. He made a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. He is. He is us. He is. We're all humans. We're all.
We're all human. We're all
We're all
human.
just humans.
We're all just chugging along.
Hmm.
Um, so that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. So I hope that with that little conversation there, that Gunnar perhaps has maybe recontextualized in your list there.
Yeah. I respect Gunnar. I
Hmm.
think it was just the taste in the mouth of him betraying at
Yeah,
the very beginning of the betrayal, and then this constant longing for Cora. But
he's just a
again,
sad boy. He's just a
who
sad
hasn't
boy.
longed for a beautiful woman before?
The one that's he's friend zoned from the start.
He really is all of us.
He's like he's like, oh, Den was asking about you. Me too. Yeah, but me too. Poor guy. We'll see what happens in part two. So for me, I think that Jimmy is like that interesting character that just like stands out so much in this movie. Um, we get barely any of them, ironically, in the PG-13 film, but with this,
Yeah.
you just get him. You get this character that has no human. He's not human at all. There's no human qualities to him whatsoever. But
Mm-mm.
he's just learning free will. He was a
Yeah.
character that was literally like a slave to the mother world, and then throughout the course of this, he's like, he's just trying everything. He's trying to figure out what his personality is. He's like, I'll put on this deer antlers. Does that work? I don't know. We'll see if I like it or not. I'm just going to give it a test. Oh, I like these butterflies. These things are great. I'm just going to say some random philosophical thoughts that I hear about honor and things that are stored in my memory bank, and we'll see if people interact and engage with me. Um, and then eventually he just gets to the point. He says that because of the Princess Issa's passing, he's like, I can't. All of the Jimmies put down their weapons and no longer fight.
Mhm.
Um, but without knowing about Princess Issa, or he's unaware about what Princess Issa is really. Um, just based off of that protocol, he still takes up the weapon and saves Sam at the end of all things, right? Um,
Mhm.
so it's like it's just free will and acting. He's like, I saw a person in a terrible situation and in dire need of help, and because I'm a droid, I'm a robot, I have super accurate skills and I can save her, right? He made the ultimate choice. He's got free will. He's just living his life and do what he wants to do, and he's just this roaming. He's kind of like a scarecrow in a way out in the fields, but
Yeah.
like a mobile scarecrow that can actually do things. I guess maybe a Ronin is the best way to describe him, from like this
Hmm.
from samurai lore. This character that can just go out and do whatever he wants and just sees things in the world and sees people in trouble and helps out and then moves on to the next village. But right now he sees a needed belt and says, I'm gonna help out here for the time being.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad planet to get lost
Worst
and go
places.
discover yourself. Where it's beautiful. There's plenty of opportunity to reflect in the nature, be very transcendental,
Very transcendental
and
indeed.
it was, you could tell they were using his scenes as like kind of like comedic relief, but not comedic,
But
but
not
like
comedic at all. You're right. Very
a peaceful
philosophical.
release. Yeah, it was like a very peaceful release, a relief, for all the action scenes, and
Yeah.
they were never very long, right? It was like
Just
two
quick and
minutes
to the
maybe.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you're kind of right. I didn't think about it that way. He's like exploring free will. He has no masters. All his the evil guys are dead. So
He's like,
excited to see what he chooses to do with that in part two.
sure. He's found himself and now he's like, all right, what else do I do? So
Yeah.
excited. Yeah, we'll carry on the journey with Jimmy in part 2 then. But one of the things that he talks about a lot is the concept of honor, which seems to be an important thread throughout the movie. So just in a grand sense, why do you think that honor is such an important virtue?
Yeah, and he also it's also one of the first things mentioned in 300, by the way.
Ooh, it's always together.
It's he has a thing for
Don't quote me
honor.
on this, but I think that one of the writers for this also wrote 300.
Ah,
So
okay,
another connection perhaps there. Again, might be entirely wrong, but I think if I remember correctly, I think one of the people did.
okay, okay. Yeah, it caught my eye or ear when I heard it. Just because I know we were going to talk
These
about it.
threads and
So
also Watchmen is full of honor.
yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely a theme I think he likes to focus on in different ways. Yeah, I actually looked up the definition of honor because I
Hmm.
think it's obvious, but at the same
What
time,
does Merriam-Webster's tell us?
yes, it says the quality of knowing and doing what is morally right.
Hmm,
You know,
that's a great definition. I mean, it's simple and it's to
yeah,
the point, and it's a word that people don't really define too well when they're just asked to define it. So I'm glad that you did that. It's good for the conversation here.
yeah, it helped. The other definition was always like to honor, to uphold something, like an
Hmm.
agreement,
Hmm.
right? But that's
Basically, doing
mm,
what's right because it's right is honor.
yeah, and exactly. So yeah, I think it's a classic, you could say corny like theme, but it's not something arguably we witness so much in today's world.
Yeah,
Particularly by the most important people, our leaders, or in the business world,
that's true.
it's, you got to get the profit, so it's a nice reminder of the power of honor and what it can do in the face of evil and wrongdoings.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important. It's a nice reminder of how we should practice it.
Hmm.
Uh, the other thing I think about is uh, both. I referenced Dune here, but in this movie, in these kind of movies, these space operas, where there seems to be no limits in terms of technology, like capabilities, anything is possible. Like
Yeah.
when everyone has like so much power at hand, there needs to be honor to keep the world
Mm.
from
Keep everyone
burning.
in check.
Yeah, there needs to be like an honor
You need to have
system.
ethics in order to ensure that we don't enslave everybody and destroy the world.
Yeah, we don't ruin ourselves into extinction. So I reference Dune because the base of Dune is that Earth at some point had been destroyed because of
Mhm.
nuclear war.
Mhm.
Like we
Yeah.
blew ourselves up. And
Oh,
whatever handful
well,
is
the doomsday clock keeps moving.
uh-huh. Little Watchmen
Where's
reference
Doctor
there as well.
Manhattan when you need him?
Seriously, he's on
He's grown
Mars.
tired of these people.
He's tired of humans. But anyways, after that happened, people escaped Earth. They built colonies, other planets. Like there was just a universal agreement to ban
Mhm.
nuclear
Mhm.
weapons, and that was withheld through honor.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there was no law. Like there's a law, but really, like anyone could have broken it any time. There's just a mutual agreement to not like wreck ourselves.
Right.
So, and that was withheld for thousands and thousands of years. So there's power in honor. And I think it's really important that we continue to do it in order to advance and evolve more and more.
I think that's right. I think that's entirely right. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, like, it's a virtue that we want our leaders to have, and it's a virtue they oftentimes don't have.
Yeah.
The main villain of this story, this particular installment is named Admiral Noble, Atticus Noble, last name
Hmm.
Noble. Literally, if you look up the probably honor in the thesaurus, you'll see a synonym that reads noble, nobility, right? A person that acts
Yeah,
nobly is as a person filled with honor. Um, and he's perhaps the one filled with the least amount of honor in this story so far. So it's proven that point entirely. I mean, he saved when he just before he takes out the King Leviticus later on, pretty gruesomely,
right.
I'll to say, by the way.
Yeah,
He's like, "Oh, honor, I understand. We named that the ship, that the dreadnought that's right above your skies over there, called the King's Gaze, in honor of the king, that the slain king that died because people tried to rebel against him, and that's why we crush all rebellion now." So the kind of like bastardization of honor is being used as a ploy to thwart enemies of the state in the worst
yeah,
way possible. Like, it's crazy how it can be used to crush, but also I think in the way that we as a society and humans generally think of honor, it's us unclenching the fist and doing good and being open to things and embracing different ideas and cultures and possibilities. Um,
yeah.
so yeah,
And the sad thing is, like, Noble, as example, could very well fully believe
I think he
in
does.
his being honorable,
He does.
right? Like,
Yeah. He's like, I get honor. I don't understand charity, but I understand honor.
yeah. So some people they think they're knowing what is right and doing it, but in reality, it's
I think he's the definition that you shared is so good because I think he's conflating honor with this like false form of justice, right?
mm,
He's thinking that it's honorable in order to enact justice on those that are enemies to the state, right?
right.
And because of that, that gives him the obviously it's also a very much a Game of Thrones like society where you have to do things and probably step the ladder up to get to where you want. He's has his eye on the Senate. He's like, if I get
Yeah,
Arthaleus and bring her in, oh boy, I'll have my seat secured for sure. Um,
yeah,
so he's definitely an ambitious person, but you have to play the game, which seems in this, at least in Motherworld society, to kill our enemies is the only way to move up that ladder. So in a way, that seems honorable to him.
yeah. It could be how he was raised.
Could be.
Like
Oh
this, yeah,
God,
this is how
get to
you,
see what his
or
childhood looked like.
or it's justifying a means to an end. It's doing bad now, so
Hmm.
I can do good later. I don't think that's his
I
mindset.
don't. He's just counting down the minutes so he can get to those sea snakes again.
Oh, yeah, those are funky. But I gotta say, credit to whoever named the ship the King's Gaze.
Hmm.
I think that is a great
That's a good
name
one too.
for such a Death Star.
Yeah,
Great one.
the king is always overlooking
King's
at you.
Gaze. Always, yeah. Big
Big, big,
Brother's
big
always
brother.
watching.
Exactly. He's always over your shoulder looking at you.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Crazy stuff. And I think as we go into part two, honor is just a thing that the main cast is looking for, right?
yeah.
It's very much I think an honorable thing that Gunnar does at the end. Like that's definitely an act of
Mhm.
honor where many of these characters have felt like they either lost their honor or are trying to regain it. Right? I think everyone is Tarek, Nemesis, General Titus,
Yeah.
Milius, Blood Axe, Darian, um, definitely Cora. Um,
Mhm.
I think all those folks are just like they're missing this piece of themselves, which I think is just like they're here to do this impossible task because they feel like they've done such a wrong either in the world or to themselves that they are irredeemable, and the only way to do any sort of honorable redemption is by saving these people, which is a noble task to do for sure,
Yeah.
but it's driven out of guilt.
Right. I hope it solves their guilt. If not, I hope there's a village therapist.
His name is Gunnar.
Oh.
I'll just tell you, I'll tell you what you want to hear. And speaking of just overall lessons, I think I talked about the Gunnar of it all, and we talked about honor. But are
Mhm.
there any other lessons that you think that we as people can learn from what this film presents?
Yeah, I think in general it's just I touched on it a little bit, but just the importance to live truthfully.
Yeah, that's
I
a great
think,
one.
and yeah, and to your values. I mean, the story's not over. We know evil didn't lose yet, right? It wasn't a feel good movie where
Yeah.
good always wins in the end, right? Well, it remains to be seen in part two, as I haven't seen it yet. But we can't say good side always wins, but we can say, having honor, kindness, and sacrificing for others
Hmm.
can give you strengths and advantages that being evil doesn't.
Yeah,
It gives you the chance to rally with other people and people fighting for a cause. You know, unfortunately, the other the other side is fighting for their dead partner.
yeah,
But in general, I mean, that kind of ties into it. Fighting for something and having a passion and a love for something is gonna give you strength.
I agree.
So
I agree.
yeah, be a good person and humble thyself.
All good points. And I think Velt is a world worth fighting for. That village is worth fighting for, right? Those people have
Yeah,
given us no reason to be like, yeah, they should be taken over and live out as slaves for the mother world or brutally murdered.
yeah. No, they even like to toil manually to connect to the
I
earth.
think that's a
Like they're
beautiful point. They're like, we take from the earth and we give it back to them, right?
yeah,
It's worth putting in the effort when there are easier ways to do it.
yeah, absolutely. And that village. Sorry, this is kind of off topic, but I just he didn't have to whip out the laser sword to kill Sidri's wife. Like the opposite of honor.
Well, they're not good people. Another
He's clubbed
reason.
everybody else to death. He just wanted to like flex and whip out the light sword.
It's a power move.
It was a power move.
It's a power move, and frankly, the cadre of troops that get left behind are not good people either, right? They're gonna just like
No,
rape this poor girl, and who knows what other atrocities they're gonna commit across the town over the next 10 days. Not 10 days,
oh,
10 weeks. They're supposed to be there for 10 weeks.
it would have rained havoc. Yeah, power is it's a corruptor.
Unchecked power too. Like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah,
Like that guy, all those people could do whatever they want, and they'll just say, "These dogs don't deserve our mercy at all."
yeah. And they even give you a hint of hope that like the main commander is gonna be good when he like gently drinks the water, says thank you,
Mm-hmm.
and then 10 seconds later he's like, "That's how I like him." young,
He's just like,
young and
yep,
feisty.
yep. Another bit of scum. Yep, no,
Yeah,
no redemption
sounds like
here. These guys suck.
okay.
Well, that's all I had for part one. This is clearly a
Hmm.
part one. This ends with a big
Yeah,
cliffhanger of like Noble having this conversation with Belisarius and being like, "You go get my daughter now,"
yeah,
and bring them all to justice, squash this rebellion, figure this out. You got to do it. So as we prepare for chapter two, the Curse of Forgiveness, what are you most looking forward to in the next installment?
yeah. I think my most exciting thing is just kind of learn more about the
Mm-hmm.
characters. Like
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, it's clearly a part one. It was a great part one. You're not going to get all your questions answered, so you're really there for the journey in the first part, right?
Yeah.
Assuming part two will bring the answers. I want to know more, like I said, about Tarek. We don't know specifically what happened with Cora. I hope we see what got her banished or made her flee, like how the assassinations occurred. I want to know if Carrie Hughes was an evil leader because
Yeah.
they give him one scene, I think, and he seems good.
Mm-hmm.
So want to see if that's right, if
Mm-hmm.
that's true, or if already this reign of terror was already kind of happening. Because we know Belisarius was a general himself, and they were already going and wiping people out.
Yeah.
So I love Kyrgios. I never want to think of him as a
It's a bad guy.
as a bad guy, but you never know. So yeah, just exciting to see how they tie everything together. I think there's opportunity for them to do it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
See, maybe they'll even give us some background on what happened with Titus, how
Maybe.
how he got his infamy. So yeah, I think it's some more sick fight scenes, and we'll see if there's a big fight. I liked your theories in your last podcast that they think the fight's over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have no clue
So
that they're coming or potentially coming
yeah,
or that Noble even survived.
yeah. So it's not going to be like a Tarantino Hateful Eight or whatever, where They all just have a big showdown. Maybe they're wiped out, and then they're
Hmm.
taken hostage and have to fight from within, like the motherland. I don't know. So we'll get more Balisarius for sure. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to dive into it pretty soon.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm not spoiling anything, so it's just intriguing
Yeah.
to get all that down. It's recorded. We'll check back soon to see how whatever well, all of Peyton's predictions if they come true or not.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, regardless, it's been a fun journey. As mentioned, even the PG-13 is a fun adventure
Hmm.
once you
Quick
accept
quick
it for
romp.
what it
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
exactly.
It's not the top of my like Schneider list films yet, but I love a part two.
Hmm.
I love Dune Part Two. So it could really take this up to the next level and make the whole story elevate higher on the Schneider list for me. So
Hey, and you've got the good stuff yet coming too on your Snyder adventure. You got Man of Steel, you got BVS, the Ultimate Edition, and the coup de grace, Zack Snyder's Justice League.
oh gosh, yeah, I'm excited. But as I told you, four Schneider films in 48 hours was a lot of movie and a lot of blood. So I'm gonna take
Hey,
a brief hiatus
no
and then
blood,
I'll be
Man of
back.
Steel, PG-13, baby.
Okay, okay.
A crisp 2 hours.
Nice. Yeah, I loved seeing I 300 was like an hour 45.
Yep. If he wants to, he can tell it in a quick
He can
amount of
he
time.
can do it. He can do it. And the slow mo on that one didn't feel rushed either. That just felt
It just felt right.
right.
It
It
just
just
felt
felt
right.
right.
Oh man, King Leonidas. Oh, when the sky just blackens with the arrows at the end, so good. And that was the first time. And he does it later in Watchmen, and of course the other comic book films he does, where he like literally adapts the images from a comic book into film
Ah,
itself. So that's why 300 was so revolutionary for just that itself, and of course the
amazing.
action sequences and the story that it tells. But Watchmen
Yeah,
really took that to another degree too, with that same stuff. And then
yeah. Watchmen was really cool. Did Schneider direct the second 300, the sequel?
he did not, but he's a producer on it. It's his production company that did it.
Okay.
He was doing Man of Steel and BBS at the same time, so like can't do it all at the same at once.
No.
You've seen
Okay.
we watched Army of the Dead together. Uh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, we did. We watched it. You may not remember, but we watched it. We've watched it together. The zombie film that he did. You may not know that it was a Snyder film, but with Dave Bautista and Ella Purnell, uh, we definitely watched it. So maybe it's worth a rewatch for you in the near future here. It came out a few years ago. It's on Netflix. Um, but
Your pause. Okay.
he has there's another movie in that same universe called Army of Thieves that is like a heist film based in that, and that's kind of he didn't direct it, but he's like involved with it from a
Okay.
producing scale. So it's that kind of same approach. But yeah, 300 Rise of an Empire is also another good one. Slept on for
Yeah,
sure.
I didn't enjoy it as much. It did feel very comic booky, which I understand it's derived from that, but yeah. Give me the OG every time, but never gonna hate on some fighting on a ship or something. And
And we might get a third one too in the 300. There,
really,
yep. Snyder has a story that is they're kind of working with Warner Brothers on about an Alexander the Great trilogy for it. Not a trilogy, but like a third installment, focusing on Alexander the Great, taking up
okay,
moving that story further. So
okay, open, always open.
open to it. Who knows what happens? But
Yeah.
what will happen, folks, is chatting about chapter 2, the curse of forgiveness, which we will do very soon here. So, Peyton, thank you so much for joining this week's episode here, and we'll be glad to have you back on to chat about chapter 2.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been a blast. Your knowledge far surpasses mine, but it's always great to, especially given you know the whole chronicle at this point. But yeah, it was a great time. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I hope to be back.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. And folks, thank you so much for listening to this installment of Force Ghost Conversations. Of course, if you want to continue the conversation, we're available on all social media platforms: X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky. I think I said them all here. Just search for Force Source Conversations, and we'll be there in some capacity. And until next week, we'll be back with a brand new episode. So until then, may the Force be with you, and take care.